There is no heavier burden in life like unfulfilled potential. Nothing robs a man of his dignity and self-worth like potential that is not fulfilled. But then, what is potential? Potential is dormant ability. Potential is hidden strength, unused success, and untapped status. Potential is a secret. Potential is who you are, but nobody knows it yet. That is potential. In most of my forums, I tell my audiences that in every seed, there is a tree. And in every tree, there is a forest. But if I may ask a question, does every seed become a tree? Does every tree transit into a forest? Not. Some seed die as seeds, and some trees stop at just being trees. Have you ever wondered why two individuals will start career at the same time, and 20 years later, one of them become the managing partner of the largest audit firm in the world, while the other is still a mid-level audit manager of a local non-governmental institution? Have you ever wondered why two medical doctors will graduate from the same graduation square, and 15 years later, one become one of the leading surgeons in the country? They are flown out and in of the country and doing surgeries all over the continent, while the others is still a local doctor running a local healthcare in some dusty suburbs of the capital. Have you ever wondered why two bankers that started career as tellers with the same disadvantages, and 18 years later, one become the CEO of the leading bank in the country, but the other is a branch manager of another branch, the bank in some remote areas in the country? What makes the difference between people that go on to living their full potential, their ambition, their aspiration, and all their fantasies, when others, their dreams, die as nightmares? Do you know what? Man is born to live and not to rehearse to live. In most of my forums, I tell people, I say, there are two kinds of individuals in this world. Number one, you have those who are living, and number two, you have those who are rehearsing to live. It is time to stop the rehearsal and start living. Welcome to Be Inspired with Pepe Minambo, unlocking your full potential. Brought to you by Pepsi Max, Centenary Bank, and coming to you right from Lake Victoria Serena Golf Resort and Spa. In tonight's episode, we are picking it where we left it last week. Unlocking your potential, the power of potential, and step-by-steps on how to fulfill and realize your full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, potential could probably be one of the most important words in the English vocabulary. You see, potential is more important than your job, is more important than your title, is more important than your asset, liquid or solid assets. I've seen people over time invest so much on their job, working so hard on their job, but not working hard on their potential, not investing on their potential. You know, one time I was flying from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Nairobi aboard a Kenya Airways plane. And upon sitting on the plane, I was given a newspaper, the Daily Nation, a sister paper to the Daily Monitor in Uganda. As I flipped through the pages of the paper, I went to the obituary page. And there were a few death announcements. But one particular announcement caught my attention. It was a 4th year anniversary of a youngster. Looking at the picture, they could have been 10 or 12 years old. But what was so interesting about that death announcement or anniversary announcement was the way his family mourned his loss. It's the way they expressed themselves. They felt that death denied their child the opportunity to fulfill his full potential. And here is what they wrote on the paper. They say, a sun that could not heat up, a moon that could not light up, a star that could not shine, a mountain that could not erupt, a sea wave that could not rise up, and a flower that could not blossom. Badly, sadly, and deadly missed every moment. I stopped and reflected, and I wondered what kind of potential this youngster demonstrated. What kind of future was he warming up to step into for his family to mourn his loss the way they did? You see, unlike this youngster, most of us have had the privilege and the blessing to live long. We've lived over 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years. But if you observe carefully, the fate of most human beings under the sun is no different from the fate of that youngster who died very early in his life. The story of most people will be the same. The story of a sun that could not heat up. The story of a moon that could not light up. The story of a star that could not shine. The story of a mountain that could not erupt. The story of a sea wave that could not rise up. And the story of a flower that could not blossom. You see, I've been around for a while, and through my practice I've met people, I've been to organizations. And sometimes you see a business with the potential of doing 1 billion Uganda shillings turnover monthly, but stuck in a 20 million monthly hustle, 20 million turnover hustle. You see a business with the potential of going countrywide, but is stuck in a local community as a local supplier. It hurt me to meet individuals, professionals with a business acumen and business pedigree of running multi-billion, multi-trillion Uganda shillings organizations, but stuck in middle management, or stuck in the skin of a supervisor, or stuck in the skin of an officer. You know what? Some people are late and they are behind their dreams and behind their potential. At 40, they are in places where they should have been in their 20s. They are at 50 in places where they should have been in their 40s. If you look at their biological age and their career growth, it's not commensurate. Such is a concern when it comes to potential. Someone say, why crawl when you could be walking? Why walk when you could be running? And why run when you could be flying? For the sake of this episode, I'll be talking about 4 aspects that helps you fulfill your potential. I started with aspect number 1 last week, which was exposure. Aspect number 2, self-awareness. I'll tell you, one of the most difficult things in life is to know yourself. You see, self-awareness allows you to self-correct. There are so many things that you tolerate in your life today is just because you do not know your true worth. You do not know yourself. If you just get to know yourself, there are things you won't tolerate again. There are places you will not even go to. There are people you will hang around with because you've now come to understand who you are and your true worth. There are jobs, there are offers, there are income that you won't even accept because now you know your real worth. You know, many years ago when I launched my first book, Be Inspired Before You Expire, I was talking about self-awareness. And after my talk, a couple comes to me, they were so excited. And the wife looks at the husband and looked at me and looked at the husband and said, Pepe, if I had what you are saying when I was 10 years old, I would not have married this man. And the man bursted into laughter. You know what this woman was trying to insinuate? She was trying to say, Pepe, if I discovered myself earlier in life, I don't think I could have settled for less. I think I could have set my standards so high that this fellow will not even have the guts to come next to me. So that is the power of self-awareness. And months later, I kept on talking about my book, and I was invited into this church congregation, and I was speaking to hundreds of people. After my talk, a gentleman walks to me on stage and say, "Hey, Pepe, I am 67 years old. Where were you when I was growing up?" I say, "What do you mean where I was when you were growing up?" I say, "I wasn't born yet when you were growing up." You know what he was saying? He said, "Pepe, I just wish I had you when I was a bit younger and understood myself, and I had an idea of what I got. I could have negotiated better things in life, better career, better jobs, better opportunities, and better relationships." I will never forget this. I was in the Congo speaking in a forum, and after everybody left, there was this old man that sat in the seats later. And as I was walking out, he stopped me and asked me, and he told me, he said, "Look, young man, I'm a retired pilot. I wish I had these things before I started my career. I think my retirement will be very different." But as I always say, each one of us carries a good news. And this is the good news. Dreams have no expiry dates, and potential has no shelf life. You can become anything you were meant to be at any age, under any circumstances. So the second aspect that helps you really fulfill your potential, know thyself. Let me tell you, the longest journey of your life could be the journey of self-discovery. People live life at 50, 60, 70 and go to the grave without ever meeting the most important person of their lives, without ever discovering their true potential. But how do you, again, get to know yourself? So we have what you call the 3 mirrors of self-awareness. Number 1, mirror is what you think about yourself. Number 2, mirror is what others think about you. And number 3, mirror is the truth. Now you see, what you think about yourself, what others think about you, and the truth. You may build your life around what you think about yourself, or you may adjust your life around what others think about you. But my question tonight is, what is your truth? What is your true potential? Thank God you have a job. Thank God you have a hustle. Thank God you run a business. But my question is, what is your true potential? The most unfortunate things with most people is that they have built their life according to other people's opinion. You know one thing? The average human being is mediocre. There is so much mediocrity in our society that is sickening. Mediocrity in our workplaces, mediocrity in our communities, mediocrity in our families, in parenting, mediocrity everywhere. Now, people with mediocre mentality, they share with you their perspectives about you. And if you build your life around their perspectives, you are associating your life with mediocrity. Talking of mediocrity, someone may ask, "Pepe, what is mediocrity?" I've read a lot of definitions of mediocrity. I've read books around mediocrity, but none of them equals whatever I learned from John Mason, a statement of mediocrity. Mr. Mason said, mediocrity is a region bound on the north by compromise, on the south by indecision, on the east by past thinking, and on the west by lack of a vision. I say, wait a minute. What is mediocrity? Again, a region bound on the north by compromise. A lot of people living far below their potential. They have compromise. The kind of jobs they do, compromise. The kind of income they earn, compromise. The kind of life they live, the kind of people they've associated themselves with, the kind of family they raise, compromise far below their potential. And I'll tell you something. One of the simplest ways to improve your life is to raise your standards. And I challenge you tonight to write down all the things you will never tolerate again in your life, all the people you will never tolerate again in your life, and demand what you think you are worth of. Because you know what? In life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate for. So raise your standard. Say no to compromise. You see people doing work in companies, report so substandard, outcome of so substandard. Here's my challenge. You can't fulfill your potential by just being like one of them. And I always tell my coaches, when everybody is sitting down, stand up. If everybody stands up, stand out. If everyone stands out, become outstanding. And if everyone becomes outstanding, become the standard. To fulfill potential, the first thing you have to do is to raise your standard. A region bound on the north by compromise, but on the east by past thinking. Nothing holds people back in life like past thinking. In fact, on this book of mine, I say, a lot of people are held captives by their past. Nelson Mandela once said, he said, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. You know, your future is someone's past. Your dream is someone's reality. So do not be a victim of your past. In fact, in my book, I say, you know what? When a cat sits on a hot stove, a cat will not sit on a hot stove again. But the tragedy is, a cat won't sit on a cold stove either. Because whenever a cat sees a stove, they think about the burning experience. Are you a captive of your past? Have you dared before and got broken and you can't dare anymore? You've given up on your dreams. I say in my book, you know what? If you don't give up, magic happens because the universe falls in love with a stubborn soul. Potential, potential, potential. But mediocrity is a region bound on the north by compromise, on the south by indecision, on the east by past thinking, and on the west by lack of a vision. Talk about indecision. Did you know that the distance between where you are and where you are supposed to be is simply a decision? To fulfill your potential, you must make up your mind. You must make a decision. In my book, I say there are only 2 great days in a person's life. I'm quoting William Buckley in chapter 1, who says there are only 2 great days in a man's life. Number 1, the day they were born, and number 2, the day they discovered why they were born. But you see, with age and maturity, you start reflecting. 10 years later, after writing the book, I said, no, Pepe, there are not 2 great days in a man's life. There are, in fact, 3 great days in a man's life. Number 1, the day they were born. Number 2, the day they discover why they were born, self-awareness. But number 3, the day they decide to be everything that they were born for and not to be less by even an inch. So, fulfilling your potential calls for making up your mind. I read a book by George W. Bush, his autobiography titled Decision Points. It talks about his childhood, the struggle, the challenges he went through life, the little belief and little faith people had in him when he said he could become the president of America. But he said everything he has achieved in life was a byproduct of a decision. You could be more. You can go further, provided you make the right decision. You have no idea how much more you could do, how much more you could become, how much far you could go with the right mentorship, the right tools, on the right platform, and with the right encouragement. So, say no to mediocrity. That is the second aspect of potential, self-awareness. So the first mirror is what you think about yourself. The second mirror is what others think about you. But the third mirror is the truth. Tonight I want to ask you, what is your truth? What is your truth? What is your truth? What is your truth? We'll get a commercial break and we'll be right back. We'll continue from where we have left today in our next episode, because potential topic is too deep, is too profound to be handled in just few minutes. We will be right back. In our book review segment tonight, we are still reviewing my first book, Be Inspired Before You Expire. And last week we had a candid reflection and conversation around this book. If I may remind you, my favorite book, my favorite quote of all time is this one. Only two things will change your life: the people you meet and the books you read. And back into the studio tonight with me is Richard Mwebesa, my good friend. Richard is a business executive. He's a general manager for Britam, Uganda. He's an author, the author of the best-selling book, Out of the Crowd. He's a poet and a thought leader. So, Richard, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Pepe. Good to be here.
Welcome. So, we are looking at chapter 3 today of Be Inspired Before You Expire. Will you tell me, Richard, what chapter 3 is all about?
First things first. I think for me, chapter 3 was a vitamin to the mind. Why? Because the highlight is build a high definition of self-image. Pepe, self-image is everything a person needs to have. And the right image is one that will leverage them to go into chasing and achieving their fullest potential. If you allow me start with a key quote, which is the highlight in this chapter, as said by Sir John Gielgud. He said, and I quote, "One's self-image is very important because if that's in good shape, then you can do anything or practically anything."
Wow. Wow.
As he affirms, self-image is everything. I think for me, how do you see yourself as an individual, as a person? What is that belief that you have anchored in your heart? And what is it that you have as a conviction that has sat and that has blossomed and that has grown and germinated within you as an individual? Yes, the world out there can vouch for you, but ultimately it is you who has been created by God as a masterpiece, one person unique from everyone else in the world. So I would like to ask you, Pepe, how did you think of writing this very captivating chapter?
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard. Everything you've said here is true. I will tell you something. I read a quote by Winston Churchill, and he says, "Imagination ruled the world."
Wow.
The world is not ruled by money, weapons, or education. The world is ruled by imagination. Now, look at it this way. God say, let's create man in our own image. So the word imagination comes from the word image. So image in action means imagination.
Wow.
You can't become in real life what you are not seeing in mental pictures, in imagination, in your own mind.
Wow.
So that was one thing that I felt, look here, if you can't picture it, if you can't see it, you can't become it. You have to see your potential. You have to see your future. That's why even Stephen Covey say, highly effective people begin everything with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Image in action. So that was the motivation of writing this particular chapter.
Wow, wow, wow. Thanks, Pepe, for that. Because if you allow me just also reaffirm something in the book. This time I'll have to read because I would like to pick something. You say, self-acceptance comes from meeting life's challenges vigorously. Don't numb yourself to your trials and difficulties, nor build mental walls to exclude pain from your life. You will find peace not by trying to escape your problems, but by confronting them courageously. You will find peace, and not in denial, but in victory. I think for me that is the highlight, key highlight that crystallizes for me this chapter.
So Grab your copy of Be Inspired for more inspiration, stimulation, in order for you to unlock your full potential and live life to the fullest. So, all the handles are there. Make your orders. Until next time, be inspired before you expire. I'd like to thank you for spending your late nights with me. And I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this possible. Pepsi Max, Centenary Bank, our bank, and Lake Victoria Serena Golf Resort and Spa. Our call to action tonight: define new standards and write down all the things that you won't tolerate anymore in your life. And always remember your true worth. To continue this profound engagement, I'd like you to follow me on social media. My Twitter handle is @Pepe Joe Minambo. Good night.